Hi guys, Madison here. I just finished sifting my almond flour and powdered sugar, and that's the excess there. I'm just going to go ahead and throw it away. I only sift one time. I think that's all that you need. And now I'm going to get my egg whites started whipping. I always start on speed number 4 on my Artisan. And I have a couple of secret ingredients that I'm going to add. The first is cream of tartar. In my typical recipe, I use a 1/4 teaspoon. I've doubled the recipe, so here it's going to be a 1/2 teaspoon. And it just goes right into the egg whites as they whip. And then we have another secret ingredient, and that is salt. Just plain salt. It says so right there on the box. Another 1/4 teaspoon, or in this case a 1/2 teaspoon for a double recipe. This is a very super recipe to double up. I'll throw all the ratios in the comments. And I'm going to leave it on 4, and I'm going to add my sugar in thirds. So here's the first third going in. I'll show you that overhead view. And I'm going to go ahead, once it starts to get frothy like this, kind of like beer foam, I'm going to add my second one in, which I've just done. And then after a little bit, I'm going to go ahead and add my third one in there. Once I add all 3 of my sugars, I'm going to go ahead and bump it up to 6. And then after a little bit, I bump it up to 8. Basically, once I start to see some soft peaks form. And after just a few minutes, you can see what the meringue looks like here. Now, I'm going to show you exactly how to know when to stop mixing your meringue. A lot of people over-whip. The first sign is that it all stays in the whisk whenever I slow it down. You see how much meringue is in the whisk. That's a good sign. Now, take the whisk off, swirl it around in the bowl, and lift it up. And you'll see that all of my really big peaks, they have a bird's beak bend to them. It looks like a bird's beak. It's not a U, but it's a slight bend. And look at how thin the edges are. They're paper thin. You can see in between the peaks just how thin it is. And all of my small peaks are perfectly stiff and pointed straight out. That is when you're ready to take your meringue off and add it to your dry ingredients. I think if you add the dry ingredients into the meringue, you don't get consistent results. Now, I think this is super important. I think you have to add your meringue into your dry ingredients. I do it a third at a time. So this is my first third of my meringue. And here, whenever I add this first third, I'm not gentle at all. I literally mix it like I'm mixing cake batter or brownie batter. I just swirl it around in the pan. I'm just trying to get it to all start to come together. And you can see what it looks like here. It's not going to be homogeneous at all. It's going to look super dry. It's going to look clumpy. And that's when you know that you are ready to go on to the next addition of the meringue. If you go too much here at this stage, you can start to release the oils in the almond flour. So don't go crazy. You don't want to mix it down until it looks like a paste. But here's what you can see that I'm looking for. It looks super dry, but it doesn't look like meringue anymore. It's all kind of clumped up in individual clumps. That's when I know I'm ready to go on to my next addition. So I take half of what's left in the bowl, which is our second third, and it goes into the batter. And I always try to do about half and as even as I can, and I always scrape the sides of the bowl. Once I get it in here this time, I'm going to fold it in a little bit more gently than the first time, but I'm still not babying it at this stage. I want it to begin to become homogeneous, and you'll see this, I call this the dough method. And you'll see in a bit how it almost looks like biscuit dough once I get this second third added in. So I'm not being too gentle, but definitely more gentle than I was the first time. I'm kind of starting the fold pattern where I'm going around the edge of the bowl, and I'm kind of pushing it in, and I'm cutting through the middle every now and then. And you'll see me do this. I'm going to do a couple more folds here. Oh, got to get that back in the bowl. And you'll start to see how it comes together. And it's really great if you're using a colored meringue. You can very easily see how much more you have to go because you'll see what's not been colored yet. So if you have any kind of coloring at all, it's very clear. So at this point, it is pretty much coming together and getting to the dough stage that I like to call it. And it's going to look homogeneous. It's still going to look bumpy. So don't expect it to look like it's going to be perfectly smooth or anything. It's going to have bumps, but this is what it looks like. See how it looks like biscuit dough? It looks just like you're making some homemade biscuits. It's not going to flow at all, and it's not going to look pretty, but that is the stage I want it in. That is when it all comes together and gets homogeneous. At this point, you clean the spatula, and you add in the last third. And I try to get all of it out of the bowl, like I said. I try to leave as little behind as I can. And then once I have all the meringue in with the rest of the batter, I'll begin folding it. Now, this will look like what you expect to see. It's going to be a pretty traditional folding technique for the macaronage, but you kind of have 2 different textures in the bowl right now. You have that doughy texture, and you have the real light and fluffy meringue. So at first, it's going to take a little bit to want to incorporate together, but it's going to give you beautifully full macs that have the best texture in the world if you mix it in this way. And you see, I'm just going around the outside edges, and I'm cutting through the middle there. And I'm just trying to scrape it all off the sides of the bowl and fold it in. I'm not doing too much deflating at this stage. I've already deflated a lot of the meringue, so I'm just trying to keep it nice and fluffy, nice and light at this stage. And you'll see me deflate here in just a bit. So we're going to go ahead and go to a different view after I've done a couple more folds just to save some time. And from here on, it's going to be pretty much real time so you can see exactly how long it takes. So you see how it's come together now. It's all very homogeneous. There's no more clearly white meringue streaks and clearly kind of yellowish dough streaks. It's all one texture. Now this is what my deflating looks like. I'm doing it here. I basically spread it back and forth against the side of the bowl. I'm not going to do the around the bowl technique, but you'll see it again right here. I just start basically spreading it back and forth, almost like I'm trying to even out a cake and that after I pour it in a pan and I'm trying to get it even. I spread it like that, just back and forth in the bowl. And then I continue to cut it and fold it just so I can make sure that it's all deflated evenly. And you notice I go around the outside edges of the bowl. I make sure I get up under it every time, and I make sure that I'm getting everything from underneath it, and I'll cut through the center every now and then just to make sure it all gets folded equally. Now, I think there's a misconception here. A lot of people say that you want to stop when you have a slow flow off the spatula like this. See how slowly and beautifully it's flowing off the spatula? Most people would stop here. And you see, if you let it sit there, it doesn't move at all. See how it stays in those layers and in those ribbons and it's not settling in at all? That means you need to fold more. So here I am folding more. I think the misconception is the word slow. A lot of people say you want it to slowly flow off the spatula. I think that's wrong. For me, if I do it like that, I always get hollow max. What I want is a quick flow off the spatula. It should still flow very smoothly off the spatula, but you want it to flow quickly. And I'll give you a good view of that here in a minute. I'm just folding it some more, again, traditional way. Here's what it's looking like, and I'll turn the bowl so you can see it. This looks better. You see how it's flowing off the spatula? Let me show you again so you can get a really good view. Here you go. So you see how it's flowing, right? It's flowing much quicker than it was before. It's still flowing smoothly, but it's much thinner now. And if you let it sit there for 10 seconds, if you were to leave it here and count to 10, we would see that this still isn't as thin as I like it. See how it's still just sitting on top in the layers? You can see it. If you count to 10 in Mississippi's and it's still there and you can see it, then you need to fold some more. So that's what we're going to do now. Just a few more folds. And you can see through the glass bowl here how I'm really scraping around the edges, getting it all cleaned off whenever I'm doing my folding here. And this is going to be the perfect consistency. And I'll show you exactly what to look for. We're nearing it now. I'm going to lift it up and show you exactly how I like it to flow off the spatula. Look at that. It's beautiful. See how quickly it flows? It's still a really smooth flow off the spatula. It's consistent flow. It's not clumping and glub, 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 globs. And if you leave it to settle in the bowl, after 10 seconds, all of those ribbons have settled in. Look at that. You can see how all the ribbons that were made are settling in and flattening out. That is what I look for in my batter. Now here's the next tip, putting it in the piping bag. I pour it into the piping bag. This gets rid of any air bubbles. If you do this, you don't even need to tap your tray. See how I'm letting it flow into the bag? I'm not using my spatula to scoop it in. If you use your spatula to scoop it in, you often get air gaps created in the batter. But if you let it flow into the bag like this, it naturally eliminates all the bubbles. And now you'll get to see how I do my piping. So I have a pretty traditional technique where I just pipe and do a little spin to end it. And I want you to see, as I'm nearing the end of this first row, my first two macarons are already settling into themselves. That is what you want. You don't want to have to bang the tray like crazy to get them to be flat. You want them to naturally settle into themselves. If you're having to force it to settle down, that means you're under-mixing your macaronage, and that is what is resulting in your hollows. You want it to naturally settle into itself. And you can see what I'm doing now is I hold the bag with my left hand and I use my right hand to squeeze the batter out. If you have a bag that's super full, having that left hand on top like that can allow you to kind of control how much batter you're allowing into your right hand. It'll help you not develop carpal tunnel from piping these macarons. So it's a really great technique. You'll see a lot of cookie people use that technique. And this was just a little bag transfer here as we continue off this tray. Now watch my tapping technique. I don't put it on the pan yet. Just do the wave method, as Sugar Bean calls it. I think she's the one who I saw do it first. But I'm not tapping it 1,000 times to get it flat. I know if I leave it over there, it's going to naturally settle. I just tap it to get out any huge air bubbles. And honestly, if you pipe it, like I told you earlier, by allowing it to flow into the bag, then you won't have to worry about filling in air bubbles with a scribe or a toothpick. It's going to naturally work itself out. And this dough method of macaronaging helps you get a really smooth, consistent texture that doesn't have big air gaps in it. And I'm finishing off this tray here. And then again, you'll see me do the wave method, and I'll end up piping more after the video cuts off to finish the tray off. But this is basically what it ends up looking like. And again, you can see those first few macarons are already virtually flat. Just a few taps, both directions. And this is what it looks like. Look how smooth. This wasn't me banging it on a tray like crazy to try to get it out. This wasn't me licking my finger and pressing the tips down and the little nipples that you have. If you get it to the right texture, you don't have to worry about all that stuff. It happens naturally. And then both pans go in the oven. This is a convection oven, and I've just had it preheated to 300. And I use the oven dry method. So I haven't done an air dry here. I just crack the oven. I leave it at 300 for 3 minutes. After those 3 minutes, I shut the door, and then we leave it in for 15 minutes. At the end of that 15-minute period, voila, look at these babies. They are cooked, and they look beautiful. Look at them. They are all so smooth, and you'll see just how shiny the tops are thanks to this natural settling and to this oven dry method. I'll show you some close-ups here so you can really get a good look. So you can see what the feet look like. They look great. All of my feet are smaller than what you'll see on some people's pictures online. And I feel that a lot of times when they have really big feet, they are just always hollow. These, you don't have to worry about letting them set up and mature to fill out. They're going to naturally fill. And this is after they've cooled just for a few minutes. I'll show you with them paired together. And look at the sheen on the top of that shell. I mean, look at that. You can see how it reflects the light. It looks like a shiny macaron shell with perfect little feet. I love the way those feet look. And now's the moment you've all been waiting for. We're going to break into this mac. Remember, this hasn't been matured. This is straight off of the pan. You can see it from all sides. Let's crack it open and take a look. That is a full macaron. That is what I'm looking for whenever I bake macs. There's absolutely no gap whatsoever. It's all a consistent texture inside. Let me show you again. I'll break this one in half. Even further, you can see it. That is what you're looking for. And doing this dough method, you'll get this every time.